Guten Tag. Bonjour. Welcome. Bom dia. Buongiorno. Sabach el khair. Annyeonghaseyo. Ni hao. Konnichiwa. Welcome. Welcome indeed to our program today at the Hotspot. On behalf of Copyright Clearance Center and ICSIS, our London-based subsidiary, welcome today to Frankfurt Book Fair from the floor of Hall 4.2, where many of the world's leading scholarly and scientific publishers are gathered. My name is Christopher Keneally. Our audience today is a global one, not only because the Frankfurt Book Fair is a truly global event for publishing like none other, but also because this Hotspot session is broadcast live on the Facebook page of Copyright Clearance Center. Open access business models are a well-established reality for scholarly publishers in 2017. Yet open access continues to cause disruption for all stakeholders. At research universities especially, tracking article publication charges, APCs, brings costly inefficiency to the manuscript submission workflow for authors, universities, and funders. What's needed, and not only for publishers like yourselves, are business-minded applications and standards that serve to streamline the workflow for everyone. And that's what we're going to look at today with two very special guests, and we're going to start right now with Maurits van der Graaf. Maurits, welcome.
Thank you.
Maurits is founder of Pleiades Management and Consultancy based in Amsterdam. He recently completed For Knowledge Exchange, a survey on authors' experiences when using the Gold Road for Open Access model when publishing articles. He is currently completing a study for the Publishing Research Consortium that looks in depth at authors' motivations when they choose to publish their research using the Gold Road OpenA model. And Maurits, we're going to start today by looking at where we are. It's important for context to give people a sense of the open access world at the moment. We're at a crossroads, and those roads are going in all kinds of directions. It's a very dynamic situation. Can you briefly tell us what your research has shown? How far have we come, and where do we stand today?
Well, maybe we first have a look at the scholarly peer-reviewed journals. There are 35,000 journals in this world, scholarly peer-reviewed journals, and about 1/3 of the journal titles is now pure gold open access, and about another third is hybrid gold open access. And if you look at, that's a journal title level. If you look at the article level, the situation is slightly different, because the pure gold open access journals, they publish about around 10-15% of the articles, whereas the hybrid gold open access journals, they publish around 50-60%. So that leaves us with approximately, all estimates I have to say, but between 15 and 25% of all articles published nowadays are published on gold open access.
Okay.
That's an estimate.
Right. So about a quarter of the marketplace in gold OA and growing. And I see Laura nodding her head, so someone who should know. And what's important to say that is because where we have come with open access is the way that it has broken down silos and has brought a variety of people much closer together, in fact, in new relationships than they were ever in before. And particularly for authors, this is true. Authors were simply the conveyors of content in the past. Now they are customers for publishers and responsible to funders and responsible to their universities as well. And so where we're looking at this issue, the open access gold model, is around the author's concerns. And you have done a fair amount of research about that. And one thing you have looked into is the motivations authors have when it comes to gold open access. How important is open access to authors, as far as you know?
Well, first, I think you should look at the pathways to gold open access. If you are from the author's perspective, you have a paper you want to have published, and you choose a journal and the top reasons to choose a journal is the scope of the journal, the match with your article, and the quality of the journal, the impact factor. As the moment you have done that, you have a number of possibilities. Maybe the best match is with a pure gold open access journal, which means it's going to be an open access article anyway. Another option is that you have chosen a hybrid journal. And then, first of all, you should get your paper accepted. And the moment on the acceptance moment, then you have a choice. You can choose go for subscription only or go for the gold option. And then there's a third option. That is, you have chosen this gold hybrid journal. Your article has been accepted. And then, hey, my library has had a deal with this publisher about this offsetting deal. So I can only have to click for the open access or gold open access option, and everything has been paid for by my library or by my university.
But I have to say, if I put myself in in the author's shoes, rather, I'm confused already, Maurits. and I think that's really the key here. Your research has looked at this issue, again, from the author's perspective, and you understand best what the hurdles are. And what we're going to talk about is overcoming those hurdles, and the notion is that standards will help, and sort of integrated applications likewise. But what does your research show about the difficulties that authors confront when they are choosing the gold road or it's chosen for them?
Yeah, they choose the gold road often because they want to have more exposure for the article, especially for audiences outside academia, or there's a requirement of the research funder, often combined with a compensation fund for the article processing costs, so they have to comply with that. But once they have chosen the open access option, you have the administrative process. And the administrative process is, at this moment, complex, complicated, different for everyone. We did a study for knowledge exchange, as you explained. We did a survey among 5 institutions in 5 different European countries. And we found, for instance, at the University of Helsinki, we asked how much time did you spend on the administrative process once your article had been accepted only for this APC payment. And we had established a sort of 1 hour we find acceptable. Maybe it's not true, but we said that.
It's a lot longer than I might accept. But
30% of the Helsinki authors said we spent more than 1 hour. 50% of the French authors said we have spent more than 1 hour on this process. With the other universities in the UK and the Netherlands, it was less, like between 10 and 20%. But that's a little bit deceptive, I have to say, because, for instance, we did a survey at the University of Glasgow, and the library of the University of Glasgow has this terrific service that takes everything out of the hands of the author, and they take care of the administrative process. It doesn't mean they spend, of course, also a lot of time on it. So the administrative process is a big thing, and I understand that Copyright Clearing Center is having a tool for this. Maybe there are other tools in this world, but I think there's a much need for these kind of streamlined tools that help authors and libraries to and the publishers, of course, to get this make a streamlined workflow.
Right, and I'm sure publishers here hear from their authors, so they probably already understand some of the problems that the authors face. But it's good to hear from you because you've done a systematic research project on this, several of them, and I think it's important to lay that down as the foundation, because when you look at trying to drive out costs, create more efficiency in the marketplace, in the open access model, you have to know what the problems are that you're confronting. And Laura Cox, I want to turn to you because you're helping to address one of the problems that is really an enormous problem, but one that perhaps publishers don't see so immediately, and that is around identifying the universities that these researchers are associated with. And let me introduce you first. Laura Cox is President, Chief Financial Officer, and Operating Officer for Ringgold. Since 2003, Ringgold has developed a curated authority file of more than 450,000 institutions spanning multiple industry sectors. Laura knows something about standards. She sits on the board at ISNI, the International Standard Name Identifier, and she created the Consortium Directory Online, which was acquired by Ringgold in September of 2011. And Ringgold has some news, actually very fresh news indeed, as this database of yours, Identify, has been recently upgraded. And I know you probably want to tell us about that. What's important here is that what you now offer to publishers is a range of utilities that go from simple search to advanced data analytics. So it's not simply a standard on its own, but a standard that kind of, empowers publishers, empowers authors too.
Yeah, that's correct. And actually, if I may, I'm going to do a little
show and tell.
A little show and tell.
Please.
Yeah. And hopefully this will help explain some of the data that sits behind the APC process and what that can mean for both the publisher and the institution at the other end. So I'm just going to show you some of our new interface. We launched this just this week. And these are just a few slides to illustrate the process. So we're going to do a simple search for Harvard University. And we're going to see that these are the records that come up in the search. The first one at the top there is Harvard University. And a record for Harvard with all the Ringgold metadata in it actually includes quite a lot. We have location information, classification information, information about size, scope, type, URLs, IPs, external metadata such as the ISNI number, the Open Funder Registry ID, Carnegie data, information about the missions of an organization, its subject areas, which we actually classify from a hierarchical standpoint and roll up, and information about consortium membership as well. So why does this matter to APCs? It's about the hierarchies. It's about the precise identification of an individual unit of an organization. So for a university like Harvard, they may, and all universities have different policies on this, they may use the main institution as the cost center for all the APCs. And having a structured hierarchy enables you to roll anything that an author has entered into an APC module system to be rolled up, or they Harvard Medical School, in which case they can look at all of the departments of Harvard Medical School, but use that cost center for those APCs and not those of Harvard.
Right. I just want to say, I'm familiar with Harvard. It's down the street. And
sure.
When you say Harvard, you have to ask, what do you mean? Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School, Harvard Medical School, Graduate School of Design, the Theology School, the rest of it. And it's remarkable. If you can't see, it's worth having a look at Ringgold. The depth of the information here, and the precision, you use the word precise, and that's really critical because this is ultimately having a relationship with the funders. Many of the funders are mandating reporting. They need to know that the money that they have given to the researchers is being spent in the way that they had wanted it to be, and the only way they're going to know is if they get the right report back from the right author about the right article.
And about where their right affiliation. So it involves research impact as well. Measuring impact. It's important to know where the author actually came from. So utilizing structured, standardized data like this in an APC module means that that author it doesn't matter what they type in, the drop-down will tell them, and they can pick from that to show that this is the specific department I'm at.
And you use another magic word. You said drop-down because people may be familiar with trying to kind of work their way through the APC process, and there's a lot of open text fields.
Yes.
And I believe that's considered the pathway to hell, isn't it?
Pretty much. It is almost entirely the pathway to hell.
Especially with researchers at Harvard.
It's just human nature. We all describe things differently. We use acronyms, abbreviations. We have all sorts of issues with the way that people describe where they work and how they're affiliated. And those things cannot be unified by text alone. What does UCL mean? Is it University College London? Is it somewhere else?
Yeah. I'm gonna help you out, Laura.
Yeah.
I think if we get that a little bit away, you're talking excitedly, Laura. we love somebody with passion, but it doesn't help the engineer.
Sorry.
That's okay. So you had a few more things you want to show us.
Yeah. So this was the Harvard hierarchy. It's only part of it. There's a bit more. It keeps going. So the other thing that we do from publishers' point of view is we enable them to really assess and analyse their data, their customer bases, their author bases in against the identified database, which is a database of over 470,000 institutional units.
You know what I'm going to do? Can you cut that and give her this? Just yeah. That may help. Give it a second here.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the other thing we enable publishers to do is to look at the world of organisations that are interested in, create, subscribe to, use, fund scholarly communication, scholarly research. And so we have now developed a system that enables them to look at things by doing very detailed searching. We can look at some of the fields that are up here. It's not just about locations. It's about, you can search by IP address. You can search for things with particular sizes. And then we've also got huge range of subjects, that over 1,000 granular subjects that are the research interests and the teaching interests of those institutions. Not just universities, corporations, governments, non-profit sector, funders globally. So this is a really powerful tool for publishers to understand their interactions with all of those kinds of organisations. And the data isn't just available through an interface. We also provide it through an API and for in-house local hosting. So there's lots of things you can do with it, not just APC management.
Great. Do we have anything else to see? Is that?
That's kind of me.
Just okay, you'll do it. Sure. Thank you for that, Laura. And what we are about at Copyright Clearance Center is, please have a seat, and Maurits, is about listening to you, is about hearing about how you see this story of open access unfolding at your publishing house. We work with partners like Ringgold. We have advisors who give us a sense of the world as they know it, like Maurits van de Graaf and Rob Johnson at Research Consulting, whom he works with. But we also know that you have special experiences. We want you to share those with us. And if you have any questions for our panel, we would ask you to consider that, but I want to follow up just briefly, Laura, before we go to questions, and look at the data point you were making at the very end. And publishers perhaps are already familiar with Ringgold, but they may not be familiar, or they may not immediately see the benefit in the open access environment because they're familiar with it from the subscription model. They saw it as a way to understand where their subscribers are and maybe where they aren't and go prospecting. But this evolution of Identify really enables them to see the open access world much more clearly than they could before, too.
Yeah, that's right, because with the introduction of the author affiliation at the point of submission through APC processing, they're able to carry that information also through the production and supply chain in the journal article tag suite, so that data is attached then to the end content, but also with usage statistics and therefore assessing the amount of people who've accessed that open access content, they're able to attach that to the institutions that are accessing the content and create a map, a picture of where that content has really been disseminated and reached.
Right. A picture that you gave us, Maurits van de Graaf, was of an author sort of overwhelmed, perhaps frustrated by the situation as they see it when they're just trying to get an article published. The kinds of information that Ringgold is offering, does that begin to address the problem? Does that create the kinds of efficiencies you think they're looking for?
Sure, I think, what is needed, I think, of course, open access is still in a sort of developing phase. So there's all kinds of tryouts and new types of open access pop up anytime. But I think what you will see is a sort of convergence of the various stakeholders, like publishers, together with Ringgold, of libraries, of universities and research institutes, to make a sort of streamline the rules and the regulations and the workflows around open access. And this, of course, will help. Is one step in the right direction, I think.
Right. All right. Well, then I do want to turn to the audience and see if you have any questions, whether this kind of offering of a 360-degree view of the world as authors see it sounds attractive, or whether you have a story to share regarding the challenges that authors face in working through all the options for open access. Gold particularly, but that's not the only one, as we're familiar. They've just introduced a bronze model, which is confusing me even further, so I don't know about you. Anyway, do we have any questions here from the audience then for Maurits van der Graaf or for Laura Cox from Ringgold? Well, that's fine. So I guess, let me see whether Laura, you could tell us a bit more about data management. Can you give us a sense? Maurits was giving us a sense of the authors and the confusion that they face. You see the institutions, you speak with the institutions, of course, and you understand they're probably confused as well in their own way.
Yeah, particularly with APCs. I mean, I've talked to quite a few different institutions, and I've seen quite a lot of common set cases where the library has actually taken on the APC management on behalf of all of the authors. This is a huge headache for them. They're receiving multiple invoices for small transactions for the authors who may well be sharing payment with other institutions because it's a multi-author paper and research is global. Sometimes the funder is taking up some of the payment or all of it. They're having to manage this with unstructured data, so they're getting information through on an invoice, and they don't actually really know what it's for. Which cost centre does this go to? Which department was this person from? They don't necessarily individually know all of the people who work at the institution, so they need to have structured information that's coming through. And with the sort of tools that CCC is building, there's actually the possibility of consolidating all of those transactions into single invoices that can be centralised and then split back out to the publishers at the other end. And one of the it's just time. And the resources that libraries are putting into this is huge.
Absolutely, and these are what we could call, I guess, microtransactions, rather than the kind of one-time, one-year transaction that so many libraries were familiar with. And for authors, it is complicated further by the fact that there is never a paper with one author. There are multiple authors, multiple funders. That makes the situation further complicated, Maurits.
Sure, and those rules are multiple authors, APCs, of course, sometimes shared or sometimes have to be paid by the corresponding author, and contradictory rules sometimes. The one research funder is proposing green, the other is proposing gold open access, or the institute is promoting green. The research funder is, I can tell you lots of examples, but I don't think you want to know them. Researchers in general are baffled by it. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but it's really there's really a confusing situation which it should be addressed, and I think will be addressed by the stakeholders again in the coming years.
Right, and maybe a good way to close is to remind everybody that just as Frankfurt Book Fair is a global book fair, open access is a global challenge. And that global challenge means that these multiple authors could be dealing with multiple mandates and multiple academic bureaucratic pressures and so forth. So we really need to appreciate that, again, there isn't simply a single solution. There are going to be solutions that are going to need to address all of these issues. I want to take a moment to thank our panel today. Thank you for joining us. We've been speaking with Maurits van der Graaf from Pleiades Management, who's come to us today from Amsterdam, and with Laura Cox, who is Chief Financial and Operating Officer for Ringgold. My name is Chris Keneally for Copyright Clearance Center. Thank you all for joining us today. Take care.